Right, and welcome to my shop. Tonight we've got a fun one here. We have a problem child that needs to be addressed. Need to bring a little bit of discipline into the shop here.
Are you talking about the plane or you?
Yes. No, I was actually contacted by a friend of the channel, Brad from Cutting Edge Sharpening. He's actually in the live chat if you want to see it. And he said, I had this plane that worked really well, lended it out to a friend, came back, and now it's not holding its settings, it's not doing what it should do, and I can't figure out how to fix it. So figured we'd be a good opportunity to take a plane, which should be a good user, but has a few odd issues on it, and this would make a really good one to show what should you be looking for and what are some of the common problems that come around to say, maybe I should fix this, and how do you actually go about doing that. So we're gonna have some fun with that. But before we get to that, it is getting to the Christmas season, and for those of you who joined us in the Secret Santa this year, gifts are currently going out, and I sent mine out just last Thursday, and some of them will be coming in a little later. But I got mine in the mail, and so I figured we'd go ahead and open it tonight because it's kind of fun to do these live. So if you don't know, we do a Secret Santa each year, and the idea is you make or buy something for your Secret Santa. It gives them some ideas. You are the Secret Santa. You do it for the person you're buying for. And it's like a $20 or an afternoon, evening in the shop, and have a bit of fun with it. But it's kind of fun to get something from someone else, and you never know what you're going to get. So I got packing supplies, my favorite. If you buy something from my shop, it'll probably come with these packing supplies at some point in the future. Sarah will tell you I love it when I get a box that's overpacked. It's like, ooh, packing supplies. I don't have to go buy them now. Because packing supplies are actually very expensive, which is one of those things. Be careful not to cut whatever's inside. And inside we have a book. What kind of book is this? Ooh, a hand-bound. Ooh, oak. Oh. Okay, here we go. This is cool. This is a hand-bound book with an oak panel on it. Ooh, the screen painted, not screen painted, yeah, there's a term for that. So is it just loose? Oh, cool. So this would be a fun diary. Nice thick page. Okay, I could have some fun with this.
Oh, I want you to make
sketch
a short
pad
that says
Dear here we
Diary.
Go. Just Garf. I don't know who my Secret Santa is. I'll have to go look that up. But it's looking good. Oh, this is awesome. That is really seriously cool. So thank you to whoever you are. I'm going to post pictures of this in the group. And that is really seriously cool. Nice work. I'm happy. Okay, let's get into the video today. Do we have a super chat?
Yes.
Okay, because mine, it's scrolled up, so I can't see what's coming.
JS Trucking and Guitars had says, just got a new Stanley number 62 low angle jack last week. Haven't had a chance to use it yet.
Fun. Those are it's one of the new Sweetheart. They take a little bit of getting used to, but they're enjoyable.
Your Secret Santa's in the chat.
It's
Gary Leonard. Just plain Garf. That's the.
Plain Garf. Just plain Garf. I got it. I like it.
Thank you, Gary.
Yeah, that's really cool. I'm gonna have to make a good sketch pad. I like that. Nice work. Yes, okay, plain. So let's take a look at what we've got here. And I really haven't looked at this much other than open up the box and pull it out for the thumbnail. So this should be kind of fun. I'm not wanting to look at this because I don't know what is going to be coming out of it. So this is, and you can look at it for a couple things here. The lateral adjuster is a single bent piece of metal. It isn't bent on both sides. We have a lever cap that is painted all on the inside. I'm guessing the dip was done from the manufacturer. I don't see any other signs that this would have been done by the owner, but it might have been. Other things, the depth adjuster is steel. The knobs and totes are painted. So most of this is telling me late 60s, 70s, somewhere in that range. This, because it has no stamping on it, no name on it, this is what it would be generally referred to as a hardware store plane. What would happen is that the big companies would make unbranded planes that they would sell to hardware stores. The hardware stores could then slap their brand on it and sell it. And we see these now as well, but you'll see them from factories in India and China. And you'll see these planes that have all the same, do I have one? I don't have one down here. That have all the same types of things on there, but rather than having the standard hardware store plane that can be rebranded, now you have options of you can choose this and that and this and that and the other thing. And so you can get a good quality plane from them, and you can get a really cheap quality plane from them. But back when this was made, they had basically the one standard that hardware stores would buy and rebrand it. And sometimes they'd rebrand it, and sometimes they'd just sell it in their own box. And so this one has stamped in here, gold seal. So apparently it's valuable. Now, Brad is a professional sharpener. And so normally, when I'm going to be getting a plane from someone that says it's not working really well, like 90% of the time it's not sharp. And someone's going to tell me, yeah, it's sharp. I sharpened it. I know it's good and sharp. And then I'll test it and be like, no, it's not good and sharp. So first thing I normally do is I test it. And once you've done it for a while, you can feel the edge and know if it's sharp or not. And this one has gone through shipping, so it's never going to be perfectly as sharp, because even just wrapping up in tape and shipping it, you're going to lose a little bit of the edge, not too much. But you can generally feel it if you're careful. Yeah, this one's sharp. And I can tell you that's sharp. Now, how sharp is it, though? It's kind of a fun one. And so I actually have a sharpness tester, or an edge keenness tester. And so what this has is a fine filament that is actually measured. And so this filament is a very, very known substance. And I stretch it between 2 points, and we slice this filament. And however much pressure it takes to slice that filament, it tells you how keen the edge is. So we're going to turn this on. Here, I'll even turn it around for you in a moment here. So let's turn it around so you guys can see. Make sure that I can actually see and not getting a glare. Tear it. And what I can do is lower this down on here. Now, if the absolute sharpest a steel can possibly get is somewhere around 75. The absolute keenest it possibly is about 75 grams of pressure to cut the fiber. Now, really sharp is around 120 grams. So 120 is really good iron. Anything under 200 is perfectly sharp for the finest planing. So I'm guessing by feel that this is somewhere around 150, 140. So let's give it a try. So we are at, and this will be plus or minus 10. $180. So plus or minus 10. It is as sharp as it possibly needs to be for smooth planing. So I can trust this. We can set it aside and know that that is good to go. Now, one of the hard things to tell people is, how do you know how sharp it should be? And once you've done it for a while and you know what a sharp edge feels like, you can know it. And some people like to put it into the thumbnail, and if it slides along the thumbnail, then it's not sharp. If it catches on the thumbnail, then it is sharp. But really, that brings it down to somewhere around 300, 350. Anything sharper than that will still catch on your thumbnail. And I wouldn't want to do fine planing with something around 300. Now, a dull plane down to around 300, 250 will shave hair. But if you really want it to shave every hair on the first pass, it's got to be well under 200. Somewhere around 100 and 150 or so is where you want. So this one, yeah, getting a really nice shave, first pass, and that's called hand tool pattern baldness. See, fuzzy hairs. And so that is generally my best test. Without much pressure, can you get a good clean shaving in one pass? Then you know it's as clean and as sharp as it can be. But that means that you've got to be careful. So let's turn our attention to the plane itself and see what we can learn from this. So first thing I'm going to test on here is, things are a bit loose. Knob and tote are both fairly loose. So I'm just going to take a quick tweak on this, and I want to crank them down a little bit until they don't move, which is pretty common for travel because of expansion and contraction of wood. There, now those are solid. Does the frog itself move? No, I'm not feeling any movement in that. The adjuster moves easily. There's a good bit of wear on this from side to side, so it's not perfectly circular. It's actually a pressure point on the other side. And this is really loose, which isn't a problem. It just means you're going to have a little bit of play in here. And then I'm also getting a lot of rust on here, but it's relatively smooth. There isn't anything building up on here. So as long as that's flat, that should be okay. Now, a lot of people are going to tell you the most important thing is the bottom is perfectly flat. And it should be, but it's not something to stress over. If you're out by a couple thousandth, it's generally not going to worry unless you're getting into the finest of fine smoothers. In that case, you're probably going to want it down to about 1,000th or half a thousandth over the length of the plane. And so in this case, I'm just going to hold this on here, and I am seeing some light through in a couple points. Actually, I'm seeing a decent amount of light coming through there. So if I had to guess, I'd be saying I'm about 2,000th out at the mouth. So it'd be high here and high here. Just check it this way. Yeah, we do have a little bit there. So that's going to tell me, wow, that's still sloppy, that handle. That's going to tell me that I'm going to have a little bit of a hard time. Yeah, that one's down all the way. So that screw has been cranked down all the way. So this handle is going to be a little bit sloppy. You got to either back it off and take some material off of that screw so it can go down a little farther, or refit the hole for it. Back to the flat bottom. If it isn't perfectly flat, that means you're not going to be able to get a perfectly smooth, absolute fine finish shaving off it. And so that's what I'm going to play towards, but it may end up being that it needs to be flattened. It may be that it was dropped and the casting ever so slightly bent. That could very well be. Let's see one more time. It's not out by too much, but it is out. So let's play with it and see what we get. I'm going to set the chip breaker back about 1/8 inch away from the tip, leaving quite a bit out there. You only need it really, really close when you're doing the absolute finest smoothing. So I'm going to set this in here, and it is backing out. So I'm going to push this in. I want the iron backed out so it's not sticking forward. Put the lever cap in here, and let's do some experimentation. Ooh, that iron, that screw needs to be backed out a bit. Pushed in for shipping. Back out a little bit more. There we go. And ooh, let's see what we get. The iron is still sticking out a little bit. Still sticking out. Okay, I got to move it back a little bit farther. So what we've got here is I can't have the chip breaker that far away from the edge. It's got to be a little closer than that because the iron is still sticking out. So let's slide it forward to about 1/16 of an inch, half that distance. For general testing, I don't want it to be any closer than that. That is where I would put it for general fine use, is around 1/16 of an inch. So let's put that in there.
Is there any way you can just angle the camera, or scooch?
Slide forward, sorry.
It's just ever so slightly out of frame sometimes.
Let's put this back in. Make sure, okay, our iron is retracted. Everything looks to be good. I'm checking to see if there's any space in the frog here, and it looks to be bedded fairly well. So let's actually grab a piece of wood and see what we get for shavings. I'm going to start with something a little easier, like some mahogany here. Oh, come on. I have a scrap here. Where'd it go? There it is. Ta-da! I found it. Oh, no, that's not mahogany. That's oak.
I was like, that doesn't look like mahogany.
It's like it feels weird. Let's see what we get here. So I'm going to set this on, and I know it's retracted. It's not going to take any shavings right now. I'm just going to move with it And I'm going to slowly adjust it forward.
So you're moving but not grooving.
So I'm adjusting as I'm moving. Actually, let me just get it close to. This one is really darn tight. I'm actually going to add a little bit more oil to it. It's not spinning quite the way I'd want it to. Oil's going to take a little bit to work in, but had it backed up a long ways. Okay, we're just touching here and nothing is sticking out that way at all. So I need to move the lateral adjuster over a good ways. Something about there. Oop, too much. Back it up. Okay. Now it's not taking anything here, so I'm going to push it forward a little bit by little bit until I'm taking a shaving. I'm getting a wisp on that side. Nothing on the other side. I'm just getting a light tweak over. Now I'm getting a wisp on this side and a wisp on that side. Let me show you a close-up of what is actually happening here. Because this is, seeing the shaving is very important to know what I'm looking for. So in here, I'm going to move it over to this side, and I'm getting a very, very light wisp here. And I'm getting a very nice light wisp there. And then in the middle, I'm also getting a wisp there. So this is actually set up pretty well to take a fine shaving. But let's put it on a flat surface because that's where problems usually appear. To do an edge, anyone can do that. But to do it on flat, that's where flat soles are a problem. So for jointing, you would think you need your sole to be perfectly flat, but maybe, maybe not. But for smoothing on a flat surface, you do need it to be flat. Any questions while I'm jumping this? Or?
We had one related to the little device you were measuring with earlier.
The ruler?
Not ruler, but the little machine you had out earlier.
I had a machine.
You were talking about sharpness.
The scale?
Scale and whatever. Is there a wire that goes with that?
Yeah, well, let me give you a close-up on this.
So, can I tell you the question?
Yeah.
Okay, so Devin Teske said, I've seen James use this device before, but I want to know how much that wire costs when he uses...
The wire is relatively affordable. I mean, I've got a spool of it here that's, I don't know, like 40 feet of it. And I want to say it was like $20 plus shipping. So I can get a couple hundred tests out of that easily. So the wire itself is not that expensive. It actually feels like a fishing line, but a black fishing line. But it is a highly calibrated filament. I don't know if you guys can see it on there, but it's this right here. And so this is set up on here. The spool is actually in the bottom, in there, in there. And it comes up through this post over here. And so I can pull out more, pull it past the point at which it was crimped earlier, lock that side down, not crushing it, just holding it so it doesn't move. And then I put this side in here. And now I've got a wire pulled across that point. And then I can slice it. So it works out pretty quickly. Surface planing. So this was taking a really nice shaving back there on that, but what's it going to do on this board? I think this board is a little out flat, and I might be going, no, I'm going with the grain. So I'm taking passes evenly across the board. Bring this back over here. And I'm going 1, 2, 3, one on the left side, one on the center, one on the right. So this one seems to be dished out here in the middle, but then I'm touching on the two sides. getting this board down to flat. There, now I'm getting pretty good. So, shaving all the way across there. Shaving all the way across there. Shaving all the way across there. Then you hear that voot, voot, voot as it's going through there. That's the different grain that I'm going through on the oak on this one. So it goes faster through the porous sections and slower through the hard dent sections. And this one's actually working pretty well. Let me see if I have my feeler gauges here because I want to see that again. Oh, no, I don't have those. Shoot. I think if I have anything I can find out what that is. Well, here, let's actually put it on some sandpaper and find out for sure. So the best and easiest ways is to get something that's known flat. I have a piece of glass for that. And put some sandpaper on it. Do a quick buzz with that. Any questions on setting that up?
So are you also painting this plane in the James Wright blue?
No. Now, is Brad said anything that he wants
No,
me
I was
to
going to
check
ask.
together?
I was going to be like, would you be upset if it came back? I mean, it's got
I got
orange, and
this.
then it'd look like the bears, and then that would be sad. But other than that,
Okay. One of the easiest ways to tell is to have a known flat surface, like a piece of glass. And I'm going to put a piece of sandpaper on here. And then I'm going to back up the iron, so we're not hitting the iron. I want to back it up a good ways. Get it all the way out of the way.
oh, you've got carte blanche.
What?
You were just given carte blanche on that plane.
So I'm going to put a couple Sharpies. Particularly, I'm going to put one right across the mouth here, right in front of it, and one right behind it. Those are the most important points. As long as I'm getting rid of here and there, the rest of it's just kind of schmoo. So I want to make sure this line disappears, that line, and this nose line. Those are the ones that really are important. So we're going to start by just going 1, 2. Let's see what we got. That's actually looking really clean. So I might be using the wrong ruler then, because that's just, let me try this one. This one? Yeah, this one's my good one. Let's see. Okay, yeah, it was the ruler. yeah, it was the ruler.
The ruler, though?
Yeah, my ruler, that ruler is not trustworthy. I've never actually checked it, but this one, that one's good. So yeah, what I'm seeing here is in 2 passes, I've almost completely removed that one. I've touched all the way across that line. I've touched everything but this little corner right here. And that's well within variance. So I can come through and go 1, 2, 3, 4, whoop, 5. And at this point, I've gotten rid of everything except for this corner right here. So there's a little bit of a high spot, here, or a low spot because it's dished out. But everything else, this is dead flat.
So we have a question.
What's that?
Alex is wondering about the plane blade while you're doing that. Is that
What about
going to
it?
affect it at all?
No, I have it backed up.
You have it backed up. Okay.
Yep. So it is not engaged at all. I backed it up a long ways. So let me see. What I'm trying to figure out what problems you were having with it because it's actually working really well for me. Let me clean off this.
Oh, here. There was some clarification earlier. Hang on. My
Okay.
biggest issue has been the blade walking out of its setting or backing off if I'm planing really hard wood.
Okay, well, let's give it some workout. Usually when it's moving around, it's because junk gets underneath the blade and the frog. Here, this one's going to be a pain. Let's see, which way are we going? We're going that way. This is a piece of really dense white oak, probably swamp oak. And this will cause things to move, especially with it being ring porous, it goes faster than slower, and so it kind of is constantly hitting it, sort of like an impact hammer. So let's again
Do you want to
adjust it forward
big camera or the
once I get it set up. So I'm just adjusting the knob as I move it, waiting for it to catch. Yeah, that's hard stuff. It's a little heavier than I want. So let's loosen it back a little bit, forward.
You
Clean
still
off a
want
little bit
wide
more.
camera, correct?
What's that?
You still want the wide camera?
Yeah, I'm gonna switch
Okay.
now.
You moved the camera.
Just got
but
a
they
little bit
clicked
of
the
metal
button,
dust
so
on there
just
still.
making sure.
So, there we go. Yeah, I don't know. That one seems to be doing pretty well. Let's take a little heavier shaving and see if we can push it. Well, maybe the problem child's just the master. Yeah, no, it's actually holding really well. Most of the time, when it's having problems with it keeping its settings or moving around, the problem is that either the tension on this is too loose. You want to have a good click on it. And this one's not going to click because it's more going to thump because it's all painted. But when I put it in here, you'll hear. You want to have a good bit of resistance here, so it's actually locking down. And then number two, you want to make sure that there's no dust or junk that's on here. Sometimes I'll find that there's wood curl sitting on there, and that lifting it up is going to cause it to slide around a bit more. Here's something else I'm seeing. Yeah. Not a huge issue right now because it's actually still working well. But I'm seeing, now I'm getting this in here, there is dust that has gone between the chip breaker and the iron. And so, not a huge amount, it's just right on this edge. But if I push this in, yeah, here. Let me zoom in close and show you this. 'Cause this is another real common problem, and will be a good one to fix here. Focus, there we go. And so you can see in here, this chip is going between the chip breaker and the iron. And that means there's a gap here. Which means if you have a thin piece that's coming up, it's going to build up underneath that edge. And when it builds up underneath there, eventually this edge will stop cutting, and it will still be cutting over here where you're getting a nice smooth surface. And when that happens, that's another common reason why things will go out of setting, is that if you have one edge that's not cutting and another edge that is cutting, the edge that's not cutting is going to have a lot more resistance, and it's going to tip the iron in, which means the edge that is cutting is then going to be taking a deeper cut, and you'll get it turning on you in there.
Whoa,
so let's
you just
fix the
make
chip
everything
breaker.
Black.
Helps if I don't hit the blackout button. So what happens is if you're getting a lot of impacting going in on one side, that side is going to have a lot of resistance. And the side that the chips are going right over it easily, it's not going to have a lot of resistance. So the side where it's going over it easily is going to tip into the cut, and it's going to actually twist the iron out of the way because you have all the force on one side or the other, the iron. So that means we need to fix the chip breaker here. I want to take a look in this and see, oh wow, it's all the way along it. So what I'm doing is I'm looking here and I'm looking between the chip breaker and the iron. So I want to look into the bow on here, and I want to see if I can see light coming through between them. And it's not something I really show on a video, but in this case, I'm getting really bad connection all the way along except for right at this corner here. So we need to tweak this chip breaker to match. And making the chip breaker match is a very, very important thing. Otherwise, it will cause you all kinds of weird issues. It will cause your mouth to clog, no matter how big the mouth is. It will cause your plane to move out of adjustment. It will cause all sorts of other weird issues if the chip breaker does not match the iron. And in this case, what I'm seeing is the problem, what I'm thinking is the problem. Yeah. This one's too flat. So what we've got here is something that's out of focus. There we go. This surface here is perfectly flat with the tipped edge. So when this gets clamped flat, there is no pressure out here on the edge. You want the edge to touch, and you want some place back here to touch. You don't want anything here in the middle to be touching. So when I put this on here, it shouldn't be able to touch the iron here. It should be a long ways away from that. So what we're going to do is we're going to bend this. And sounds scary, and it can be, but the nice thing about the chip breakers, they're made out of a very, very soft metal. And so as long as you work them right, they're okay. I'm going to use a rawhide mallet here. And I'm just going to go like that. Lift it up a little bit.
Wow, that was way more musical.
Lift it up a little bit. I'm just bending this over. It's a very, very malleable, soft steel. That may not have been enough. See? Yeah, that one's not enough. So this one's going to take a little more force. So I'm going to do this the brute force and violent manipulation method. I'm actually going to push and bend. Put it down a little bit. Push and bend. And I'm feeling for when the iron kind of gives a little bit. It doesn't fully spring back. And if you go a little bit too far, that's okay. There we go. Okay, now you can actually see the bend in that. That's a bit too far, but not too out of the realm of possibility. You can see how there's about a bit over a 1/16 inch here. So I'm just going to bend it back a little bit. It's one of those things where my eye is completely good. A little bit more. Because once you actually tighten this down, it will flatten out to the iron, and then the lever cap flattens it out to the frog. There, that's about what I'm looking for. So I'm touching right here at the back, and I'm touching up there at the tip, and I've got about a good 1/16 inch of gap here where the screw's going to go through. So now, let's put this back together, and let's see if that fixes it. We may have to go even farther on this. Come on, turn in. Oh, helps if I put it in the hole. There we go. Slide it forward a little more.
So,
get it up near the edge.
Warren Munn has a question.
What's that?
Will this create an S shape in the chip breaker?
You don't want an S shape, you want more of just a C shape. You want to touch at the tip and at the back. S shape. Almost. Okay, so what I've got here is I'm looking through, and before I saw light from this corner, a really, really heavy gap here, all the way over to around here. And it was touching right there. And now it's touching all the way across except for the last little bit here. And so that means that the very edge of this is actually twisted ever so slightly. So rather than this being perfectly flat this way, the front edge is tipped out a little ways. So we're just going to tweak that a little bit more. And this is really one of those things where you just go back and forth a little bit. I'm actually going to keep the screw in the chip breaker this time. Let's make sure I got to twist it that way. So, actually, I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to put the nose of the chip breaker in, and I'm going to clamp it on the bend and let it lean over a little bit. So you can see it on here. And on this one, this point was touching too much, and this one was off. So I'm actually going to just kind of twist it a little bit. And I have it clamped right on the tip there, so I'm actually putting all the twisting pressure into that. So that is going to bend that tip farther forward. That should be about right. Let's see what we got. Yeah, that feels good. You like it when you when you turn it on. It should be able to slide easily when it's across like this. But when you turn it on, it should start to bind. And the farther you twist it until you get that tip up on there, it should almost catch on that. So when it comes down through, you have a really nice contact there. And so that screw isn't tightened down all the way, but it's tightened down enough that I'm actually getting good spring contact on there. Let's see what this one gives us. That is really, really close. Still getting a little bit of a gap there. Looks like there's actually some junk on the iron. The other thing I want to do here is I'm going to back it up a little ways, about 1/4 inch or so. And I'm going to stick my finger on here. And my finger shouldn't be able to catch anywhere along there. And I can catch a little bit right here at this corner. Whereas I can't catch here. It just slides right off it. So I need to do a little bit of work on this, but I don't think it's the bend in it. I think there might actually be some schmoo on there. And there is a little bit of rust on there. So let me show you this. So what we've got here is, you can see that little bit of rust right there. And that's just built up on there. And it looks like from here over there, this edge is flat, and this is kind of rounded off. So let's actually adjust that bit.
They're
Any
all
question?
waiting for blood to be drawn.
What?
They're all afraid of your knuckles being cut.
From what?
I don't know, they're just scared.
Chip breaker's not sharp at all.
But I do have a couple questions.
What's that?
Devin wants to know, how do you suppose the chip breaker gets to be too flat? Is it from sitting for years, and should we be dismantling our planes between extended shelf time?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just from sitting, it's just from, over time, they slowly flatten out because all the pressure's on it. You have the pressure of the screw clamping it down flat to the iron, and then you have the pressure of the lever cap crushing, because the lever cap is only touching at the back and right up on that bow. So that is just putting all the pressure down into that and crushing it even more. So over time, this is a very ductile steel. It bends, it doesn't break, and it's very, very soft. And so because of that, it's going to deform under the pressure over time. And so yeah, every now and then, especially with these ones that are the bent nose, yeah, they all eventually go out. And if they're flat and you notice there's no spring in it when you turn it back over, that's usually the problem. Some of the newer ones that are much thicker and are milled out on the backs, those don't do as much. They're thicker and they're more resilient. So you don't have as much problem with that, but there's still some.
Okay, they were scared when it was on the blade.
What's that?
They were scared when the chip breaker was on the blade.
Oh, having it up close to the edge, yeah.
Yeah.
Just got to be careful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my finest stone here, and I am going to set this up on the edge of it, and I only want the tip of this iron to sit here.
It didn't switch.
So the right button. I only want the tip on here, and rather than being flat with the stone, I'm going to let it drop down a ways. How much? It doesn't really matter. Something like that. As long as the most acute point is right at the tip, that's what's important. And so I'm just going to run it on here a little bit, and I'm going to make sure I have even pressure all the way across it. And I want to see where it's getting shiny and where it's not. And on this one, it's getting shiny from here almost to the middle, skips a little of the middle, and then it's getting shining here, but not missing the outside on the far side here. So I got to go a little bit farther on this until it gets down. And I'm also actually raising a bit of a burr. I can feel that here, not in the middle, and I can feel it here and not on the outside edge. And the reason I'm doing it on my finest stone is that this is so soft, it will rub out pretty quickly. There's no reason to go to anything more aggressive. And so if I'm going to end there, I might as well just let it go. Ooh, almost. I can feel the burr all except for that one little spot there. Here, clean this off a little bit.
I have a question when you...
Yeah, what you got?
Dr. Kahn wants to know, do you have a video with these chip breaker maintenance tips?
No, but I do have a how to stop a plane from clogging, I think is what it is, where I go through how do you actually address it. And I talk about specifics of what I do for reshaping it. So if you want to see that, it's basically the same thing of you can bend it any way you want. You bend it too far, you can just bend it back. You can bend it back and forth without any problem. And then you kind of sharpen it. Yeah, there you go. Now I'm getting a shiny spot all the way across the tip. So theoretically, if I put this on here and I hold them together and I just want to kind of pinch them with my fingers and hold it up to the light, almost. Oh, so stinking close. And I think that tip is bent a little bit. Yeah, I wish I could show you. I wish I could set the camera up here. Because what I'm getting is it's touching all the way along except for this very corner here. And normally I would say, yeah, it's okay. You're close enough. But in this case, I want to actually make this one right because if you're wanting to use this as a smoother, that means you're going to get really fine chips right up to the edge. And I'd rather that be right. So in this case, I'm going to go all nuclear on it. Dun, dun, dun. And I'm going to get a big brass hammer from DFM Toolworks. I love this thing. It's just one of those pretty hammers. And I've gone and scratched it all up. So I'm going to use this, and it's this corner here is bent back just a little bit. So I'm going to use this to really kind of work that corner down. And I want to bend it a little bit past because I can always sharpen it out. A little more.
Now grab the right ruler.
Let me make sure, yes, I got the right one. Over this shorter distance, it'd be less of a problem. I'm just crushing that tip down. There we go. It's bent a little bit past flat. So then I can take it back over here. That's better. Then we can put this on here. And it's all about going back and forth until you get a nice tight fit. Man, that's so close. What is wrong with you? Is it the iron? It might be that the iron is ever so slightly out of flat. But if that was the case, I should be able to see it from here. Ah, it's the iron. The iron is out of flat. Okay, so here, let me show you what I've got here. I see why this was a devil plane. So if I put this on here,
It's out of focus.
I can make sure that it's out of focus, and you can't see what I'm talking about. Let me see if I can do that. Okay. Let's see if you guys can see this. But I'm touching everything except for that last little bit over there. I don't know if you can see that gap or not. And so that means that the iron is out of flat. Most of it is flat except for that last 3/8 of an inch. And so here we've got a conundrum. Number one, I could go and flatten this iron, but that's a lot of steel to remove. Yeah, that's a lot of steel to remove. And 99.9% of all the work that's going to be done, that's not going to matter. However, this chip breaker lives with this iron. And if that's ever so slightly out of flat, it's not going to make any difference to the function of the plane. It's going to smooth just as well. It's going to plane just as well. The important thing is that this matches that. So what I'm going to do is I am going to bend this chip breaker a little bit past flat to match the iron. And I know a lot of people are going, ah! Yes, I'm going to. Because this chip breaker lives with that iron. And if you ever get a new iron, it's really quick to adjust this. It's like a couple dozen passes. And that's what I was doing earlier is when I tapped it and I bent that corner down, that corner was probably down far enough to match it. But then I took it over here and I flattened it out. So that is perfectly flat across. So now we're going to go back to this, and we're just going to do this again.
That was like some strange marriage of ice in the process too.
Is that what?
It was like you could twist it to some strange marriage advice, you know.
Yeah, make one fit the
one
other.
partner to change everything, or one person can just slightly, because they live together.
Okay. I gotta take that tip off just a little bit.
It's ignoring
Just
me.
the very, very edge of it. Took it a little bit too far. And so I'm just gonna keep going until I get a nice fit between them. No, need a little more. And I'm going to get a little picky on this one. Why? Because I can't actually do it with this. The coarser one, just for hair. Why? Because I can. There we go. And there is no light coming through there now. Scratch feel. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, there we go. So now, the ultimate test. Let's actually test this thing and see if we get any clogging in there. And for the amount of testing I did, I was actually surprised that it didn't clog up. Well, actually, no, the reason it didn't clog up is that there was so much of a gap there. Well, no, that wouldn't make much sense either. No, I don't know. I'm actually still surprised that it didn't clog up, because the chips were sliding through it really easily. Normally they slide through that easily. There are other problems.
Just go with the flow like wax.
Yeah, now we got no space through there at all. So we give this one last little tweak down, because I do want this to be tight. Double check that, nice and clean. Let's put the sucker back together. Uh-oh, she's laughing at something.
They're all commenting about your sound, like through their earbuds.
When there's what?
Your sound you made. I didn't do it justice, but they're all wearing earbuds or have you going through their sound system. Yeah, you all guys only get this once a week.
She gets to live with it. Okay, let's try this out and see what we get. Where'd that block go? There it is. Oop, gotta back it up. Nice. Okay, now let's see if we get any clogging. So I have not taken any shaving. I'm just going to adjust it forward until grabbing something. That's the shavings I'm looking for. Let me give this a little bit of wax. It's catching a little bit, especially after that sanding. Let's let her fly. It's like a plane wants to fly. Now let's see if anything is caught under that chip breaker. And she's clean. So I'm looking through that bow.
On camera.
Yeah, I gotta focus first.
I was just making sure.
Well, thank you for reminding me. So I'm looking through in the bow to see if there's any dust in there. And she's clean. And that's what we're looking for. Happiness. So yeah, that's probably the main problem, is that you had something clogging up in there, and that's going to cause it to move all over the place. Now, if I were spending a good bit of time with this, I might actually go through and remove the rust from the frog, but functionally it's not going to cause that big a difference. That would just be more the perfectionist in me that just has to make it all right. There we go. Cool. Yeah, it did work. What you'll notice I did there is that I didn't adjust the depth stop. And in my first pass, it was very, very heavy. I was taking off a massive heavy shaving. That's because the blade wasn't fully engaged with that depth stop. And so what it does is I'm working on it, and the iron will keep sliding back and sliding back and sliding back until it runs into that depth stop. And so that's why you always want to adjust the depth stop forward. Once you get it set up and it's taking the shaving you want, make sure your depth stop is pushed against the iron. You want the iron to be held with that. Otherwise, the iron is going to continue to slide back. The depth stop is what keeps it from going back. The pressure on everything it keeps it from going side to side. Nice heavy shavings. And it's doing them really nicely. So, yeah, there you go. Problem child. Oops, sorry, wrong button. We solved the issue. It was the chip breaker. And for something that is, I think I get far more questions that end up being the problem of being the chip breaker than any other particular part of the plane. That's one of the reasons why I often like to say, for a beginner, a low angle is really nice. There's no chip breaker to mess with. All of the movement and system on this is just so much easier to understand. There's less that runs into itself. But with this, having the lateral adjuster separate from the depth adjuster and the way it's all locked down, and then having the chip breaker and there's a separate piece that moves around, it can get a bit confusing, especially when you have a problem child that doesn't want to behave. But yeah, check the chip breaker. That might cause the problem. What do we got?
Let's see. Dennis Meko wants to know, how full should you let the mouth get before cleaning it out?
It shouldn't get full. Yeah, if it's getting full, that means there's something in there stopping the chips from coming out. They should just come out. The next chip should clean out anything from the last chip. So yeah, if it's getting full, that's usually a problem with the chip breaker, because the chip breaker is as it gets clogged up, it holds onto things and it starts to impact in front of it. Either that or there is some burr in the mouth that's holding onto things. You'll find some piece of metal in the mouth that's sticking out into the surface and catching on things.
Your disimpacting and my disimpacting are two different things. Sorry, it was the
Says the nurse.
popped in my head at that moment. Sorry, guys.
What's next?
That's okay, you were planning and then there was vein porn too, but anyway.
Yeah, she'll sit there.
Anyhow,
we're like next to each other, and suddenly she'll be going like,
they're beautiful.
It's like, why are you wanting to stick a needle in me?
Payback. Anyways. Milton S wants to know, how close does the chip breaker need to be to the iron? Is it about 1/16? Is 1/16 good enough?
Yeah, for 90% of all function, 1/16 is more than good enough. If I have a couple planes where I can back it up to about an 1/8 inch away, that's perfectly fine. If you're going to be doing really detailed smoothing on difficult grain, that's the only time you need it right up at the edge. And it's amazing how nice that makes everything work. But that also means lots more problems. The closer you get to the edge, the more it's going to want to clog up with things, and the more you have to have an absolutely perfect fit. But if it's back 1/16 of an inch, the fit doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to work. And so yeah, 1/16 is perfectly fine unless you are wanting to really surface grain, crazy, difficult wood. What's next?
Hang on a second. Bill Tiffin asked, would it clog up quicker if the chip breaker was adjusted closer to the end of the blade?
Yes, the closer it is to the end, the more difficult it is to get a good fit, and the more important it is to have a good fit. If you have a really good fit and you have it right up at the edge, it'll still work perfectly fine. But if the fit is ever so slightly off, it will clog up. And so it's very important to have a really good fit if you're doing that tight mouth. Is that another super chat?
Yes. Alan super chatted. Alan said, I learned quite a few neat tricks.
Well, thanks, Alan. Does he have a mom joke?
I did earlier. Hang on. Let's see if it's still there.
A lot of people, because if you look up a video how to set up a smoothing plane, one of the things you'll always hear is the chip breaker has to be close. The problem is if you're setting up a smoothing plane, you're really doing it for difficult wood. If you're smoothing straight grained wood, any stupid plane will do it. It doesn't have to be set up really well. It just has to be a fine shaving on a regular plane. But if you're going with crazy grain, that's when you have to spend the time to really set up a hand plane. What we got?
So, what do you call a construction worker who falls off a roof?
What?
An ambulance.
You know, I've fallen off of 2 roofs.
That explains a lot.
One, I was carrying a pack of shingles and jumping from one roof to another, and I missed. The other one, I stepped on an air hose and took the elevator.
Were we married for either of those?
No, they were
Okay.
both long before I met you. I was
Oh, so the damage was already done. Okay.
I was 12 with the air hose and 14 jumping from one foot to the other.
Okay, y'all. That's like the ages our children are becoming. Pray for me.
Hey, when I was 14 and I did that, I was foreman of the crew doing it too.
If that doesn't make it any better.
What's next?
Um,
Got time for 1 or 2 more?
I got one for sure pulled out. We'll see if we can get a couple others. Derek Smith asks, what about a wood plane that clogs?
The exact same things. The wood planes, I mean, there's less issues because you're tapping it around. But it all comes down to the chip breaker if it has it. If it doesn't have the chip breaker, it's even easier because then it's just there's something sticking out into the mouth that's causing the clogging. But if it's a chip breaker, it's got to be fitted well. But yeah, just like anything else, the mouth needs to be clean and open. It can be really, really tight and still work really fun. It can still work really well. But if there's anything sticking out, if there's a burr in the metal, if there is a splinter sticking out of the wood that catches things, a tiny little bit will cause the whole chain reaction. Just like if one car runs into an accident on the interstate, everything else behind it stops. So the same thing happens in the mouth. What's next?
Oh, Eddie just super chatted. Thank you, Eddie. I don't see any comments, so we're going to ask a question and see if Eddie has anything else to say.
Cool.
Fernando Salgado. When should or shouldn't the frog be moved forward or back?
The only reason to move the frog forward is to tighten the mouth up for really difficult grain. The rest of the time, having a really close, tight mouth isn't very important. And so I usually have somewhere around a 32nd to a 16th of an inch on most of my mouths. Because a little bit bigger mouth makes it far easier. There's less chance of clogging, less chance for things to get in the way. And so having it back a little bit is nice. Yeah, I almost never move my frogs. Unless I have a piece of wood that is just incredibly difficult. Like I had I don't have it up here. This last weekend I did a video on curly white oak, and planing that is incredibly difficult. And so for that, I really had to set it up well. But I have one that I just keep the frog forward, and that's my smoothing plane. And so that is set up within an inch of its life. I grab it, it's useful, I don't have to mess with it. But if you don't have a dedicated smoothing plane, then you may end up moving it forward and backward a bit. So, yeah. What's next?
Eddie didn't have a question, but just said, learn something new about chip breakers.
Thank you, Eddie.
I think you're on to a topic people are very interested in. That they didn't know they were interested in.
Yeah. It is a hidden problem child.
It's the secret. So I'm going to jump to this one question because it's time specific, given the time of year.
Okay.
And Alex wants to know, is James assembling his favorite Black Friday or Cyber Monday deals?
Okay, I'll spill the beans. Yes, last year I didn't do Cyber Monday. I just completely forgot, and I realized it on Tuesday, and then was like, well, I guess I can't do a Cyber Wednesday now, so, well. But yes, I will be doing a Cyber Monday deal. What I don't know. It won't include reed plane products, but yeah, I'll definitely, the plans and anything that I make will be on sale. So stay tuned. More deals to be coming on Monday. And then Thursday, I'm going to be doing my Woodworkers Christmas gift ideas, which is a video I put out every Thanksgiving. And so it's the video that is intended for you to be able to send to your loved ones and say, hey, buy something off of this video. And it is all the odds and ends things that you can buy for a woodworker who has everything, such as clamps. You can always buy more clamps, and everyone would be happy to get more clamps. But which ones? Well, then I'll help you out there. So, yeah, so stay tuned for that.
Cutting Edge wants to know, what fancy dress up is my plane getting?
I don't know. I'll have to message you and see if you want me to do something on it.
We want before and afters if you do. All right. It's 9:01.
Cool. I think that'll do it for now. So until next time, have a wonderful day. Bye.
Ta-da.